What is going on, Eagles fans, and welcome to another episode of Flippin' the Birds. I'm Corey Naito alongside David Neese. No Brian Cameron tonight, but he will rejoin us next week. Brian is busy, but David, we're going to hold down the fort. How are you, man?
Doing great, man. Looking forward to talking some birds. Been a few weeks since we've been on here together.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of in that dead period. Really no housekeeping notes to speak of. Today's the 7th, so by my math, we're exactly 3 weeks away from the start of training camp on July 28th. Obviously, that's the report date, and the Eagles will really hit the ground running on the 29th, so to speak, and there'll be tons of stories to talk about throughout that time. You want to keep it locked into Philly Sports Network and Flippin' the Birds. We'll have you covered all season long again. But want to talk about two cornerbacks, David, with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. ESPN is doing a daily ranking where they have been surveying NFL executives, head coaches, scouts, high personnel within front offices, and they came out with their running back and cornerback rankings. We're going to talk about the cornerbacks that came out today, and two Eagles made the list. It was Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. If you haven't seen the list, Quinyon Mitchell comes in at number 6, Cooper at 10. David, before we kind of dive into this a little bit, your initial thoughts. You think that Quinyon's too low? Do you think Cooper's too low? Where do you think they should be ranked?
I think Cooper's probably about where he should be just because he's, not an outside corner. I think that probably, just causes him to take a few strikes there. But 10th is, that's unbelievable. You're talking about 3 corners on every team. You're talking 90-some players, and he's 10th. I think that's, probably right where he should be. As far as Quinyon at 6, I do think it's a little low, maybe even 3 spots low. But when we get into it, we can go through some of the names that were ahead of him. But there's at least 2 guys ahead of him that I would choose Quinyon above. So for me, he would at least be 4th.
No, I agree with you. When I saw that, I thought he should be at least in the top 5 based on what he's done, especially last season. It's basically a year-by-year ranking. So we're going to pull everything up right now. And this is where Quinyon has his right up here. Last year, he came in at number 9. So he's certainly getting the respect around the NFL. He's moved up 3 spots. His highest ranking vote was 3rd. Lowest ranking, somebody did not put him in the top 10. But you see what the AFC executive said here. Well-rounded coverage game, very competitive against the opposing team's number 1. Turnover production holds him back from the top of the group. For me, still an excellent player. Now, I get the turnover point to a degree, right? Because when we're looking at cornerbacks, you're looking at coverage numbers, but you also want to see, he's got 6, 7 interceptions. The dude's a ball hawk. But that doesn't really tell the entire story of how good a cornerback could be. Now, if you look at the stats below there, and they are really impressive. You can see here 4.8 yards per target in coverage last season, according to NFL Next Gen Stats. That was the 3rd best among 87 defensive backs in the NFL, targeted at least 50 times. He was tied for 4th with expected points added. And then he allowed 1.8 yards after the catch per reception, the fewest among corners, and his 42% tight window rate was the highest in the NFL. Those last 2 stats to me alone, David, I think should catapult him into the top 5 without question.
Yeah, I agree. He can continue to do in the NFL what he did at Toledo, and that was just being a yak killer. Like you just mentioned, there are just no yards after the catch with him. And much like sacks are sometimes a quarterback stat for how long they hold the ball, more than it is like an edge rusher's ability to get interceptions, are a little bit like that as well. You want to see the interceptions, you want the you want the turnovers, and he has had a problem with his hands. Like, he has had opportunities to probably have 3-4 picks a season that just have gone through his hands. But he did have 2 against the Niners, and he did have 1, I believe, against Green Bay. I think he has 3 postseason interceptions and 0 regular season, which is a wild stat after this many years. But where he excels at everything that you just mentioned, where else he excels is just he just has a complete skill set. He excels in press, off man, zone. I mean, he can carry speed on vertical routes. He has the fluidity to mirror receivers, and he has the physicality to challenge every single catch. I mean, I believe it was his rookie year when he went up against Mike Evans, and I mean, he didn't give an inch. I mean, he's been amazing since the first time he stepped on the NFL field. And many top corners dominate weeks, like they're great one week, kind of have an average week, then an off week. He delivers high level play each and every week. I mean, it's never a bad game like where he just gets torched. In fact, his bad game was against the Niners in the playoffs that he ended up getting the 2 interceptions in. So he tackles well, just never has a busted assignment. Doesn't rely on gambling either, which is another reason he doesn't have the high interceptions. He's going to play sound football. To me, like I said, he's in the top 4. I mean, if you go through the list, I definitely would kick down 2 names to slide him above him.
Yeah, we're going to go through that list in a moment. Just want to show Quinyon's stats here. You mentioned the postseason interceptions. He actually has 4. Believe it or not, 2 when they won the Super Bowl, and then he had those 2 interceptions in that wild card loss against San Francisco. But you look at his regular stats or regular season stats, again, not going to really jump out at you per se, but again, 17 pass deflections. He was able to make good tackles. He was an all-pro last year, finished second in the defensive rookie of the year voting. I mean, this is a guy who not many people knew about leading up to the draft, unless you're a David Neese and guys that really just study tape. I mean, he came from Toledo. A lot of people were hoping maybe the Eagles drafted Terrion Arnold, and look at the absolute disaster that Howie Roseman avoided with not drafting Arnold and opting to trust his scouting department and his gut and understanding that, Makuba would be the guy for this team. So, or excuse me, not Makuba, Quinyon Mitchell, getting ahead of myself here. But I mean, Quinyon Mitchell, extremely good, extremely talented. You mentioned the Mike Evans situation. I loved it because that was like one of the few times that he got caught on camera kind of smack talking. He's more of a quiet guy when you talk to him in the locker room, but he definitely plays with a chip on his shoulder. Again, a Toledo guy, not highly recruited, and the guy just balled out and was able to make the most of it in his first 2 years. So it's been really fun to watch both him and the next guy in Cooper DeJean, who came in at number 10 on the list. David, I agree with you. He probably fits at number 10 because of he plays slot primarily. And are we really going to see him in the safety spot this year more than in years past? Obviously, NFL defenses don't really run a lot of base packages anymore. But of course, when that announcement came out, it spread like wildfire that Cooper DeJean was now a safety. But in reality, we are more than likely going to see Cooper in the slot where he is a very dominant force. And you see just some of the quotes here. This is from a veteran NFC coach. He holds his own at any position on the inside or outside. He's a corner because the way he plays. The Eagles play a lot of man, and he ain't shying away from nothing. I love that line there. He has the range and speed to play outside all day, too. He's a Swiss Army knife. And I think that's a great way to describe Cooper DeJean. You look at what he did last year, and he led all slot corners and catch rate allowed. I think that last sentence there is incredible. Has not allowed a passing touchdown as a slot corner in 2 seasons. I mean, the kid is just an absolute bulldog.
Yeah, and I think what you touched on there, his versatility, that actually works against him in these kind of rankings because he just isn't viewed as a full-time perimeter quarterback, and many evaluators still separate slot corners from outside corners, and largely do because outside corners normally are the ones shadowing number 1 receivers. But I mean, for a guy entering only his 3rd season, and really only one full season under his belt. I mean, he didn't even start till like week 6 or 7 his rookie year. So, he is just catapulting right up this list. He was a first team All-Pro, I believe, last year, earning the, league's top slot corner honor. His PFF grades, I believe, were like 4th. I don't know if you have that, but I think it was 4th among all qualifying corners. And again, it's just that versatility that they, can use him in. And if he was an outside corner, some would differ with me on this, but I don't think there'd be much of a drop off. I think the guy's an absolute animal and could play anywhere they put him back there for the, defensive backfield.
Yeah, I just pulled up PFF. His overall grade for 25 was a 78.2. That was 7th among 114 cornerbacks. So you're pretty much right in the ballpark there with the grade and what he was able to do. So again, certainly well deserved. They've got 2 of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, evident by 2 of them making the top 10. Do want to go through that top 10. Those listening, those watching, let us know in the comments if you're on X or if you're on YouTube. Let us know, do you think Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell were ranked too low by this survey done by ESPN, analyzing and asking NFL coaches, scouts, high-ranking personnel members? These are the people that basically voted for this list that ESPN has comprised. But the number 1 cornerback, Pat Surtain the second, I think that's pretty unanimous with you, David. I mean, I think he's just earned that for right now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's that would, I think 1 and 2 both are correct in my opinion.
Yeah, number 2, Derek Stingley Jr. from Houston, who you don't really hear a lot about nationally because he plays for the Texans, but obviously they had a really solid year. D'Amico Ryans has that defense playing fantastic. But Stingley Jr. is an absolute beast. So I agree with you at 1 and 2. Now, this is where I think Quinyon could kind of sneak in, David. Let me know if you agree. Christian Gonzalez comes in at 3. Last year, he was 6th. He had a highest ranking vote of 2 and the lowest of 10. So pretty much the full spectrum for Christian Gonzalez. Do you think Quinyon should be ahead of Christian Gonzalez?
I actually do. Some of it's injury related too. I don't know how many games Gonzalez has missed over the 3 years, but it's been a handful at least. And I think the trajectory matters. Several corners that were ahead of him, Witherspoon, and Gonzalez, and I think McDuffie. I think that he's performed as well as all 3 of them, if not better. And I think you touched on it when you first, came on here talking about it. This is for 2026. This is the rankings going into the season. And I think the trajectory should, way more than, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I think if you look at, how he's elevated his play every single season, that it is very likely that he's going to continue to go onto that, level again this season. So this is exactly where I would slot him in. Maybe you could argue the next guy, a coin toss between him and 4, but definitely this is where he's coming, in my opinion.
Yeah, 4 is Devin Witherspoon of Seattle, highest ranking, 3rd, lowest 9th. He was last year's number 10 cornerback coming in. And on the piece, it says he broke a logjam from spots numbers 4 through 7 with a series of top 3 votes late in the process. An NFL coordinator said outstanding in the slot, can play on the perimeter, violent, physical, impacts games in ways that don't show up in the stat sheet. And that's what we kind of talked about, right? Like there's stats that won't really show exactly how good these guys are. You can't just look at cornerbacks and say, oh, well, he doesn't have that many interceptions, he must not be that good of a cornerback. That's not how you grade these guys. So Witherspoon kind of falls into that category. But I do think that Quinyon, you can easily make an argument that he could be ranked higher than Witherspoon here of Seattle.
Yeah, 3 and 4 would be Witherspoon and Q for me as well. And like you said, it's a coin toss. It's kind of preference at that point. Quinyon's a little more technical. Witherspoon is highly physical. He always has been, even in college. And the fact that his team just won the Super Bowl didn't hurt getting some votes in the rankings either.
Absolutely. Our fearless leader, Brian Cameron, joins in. Juan Soto is number one.
For
He might be
injuries.
the only one left in Queens at this rate. Apparently, him and Francisco Lindor don't get along. The Mets are a disaster. Yeah, well, hey, Juan Soto. Brian's got to get his Mets fandom in one way or another.
He leads the league in injuries probably this season.
Yeah,
he's every year.
It's getting crazy. We got E-Money Bentley chiming in saying, "Go Birds." Appreciate you tuning in, E-Money. And so we've got those top four guys. And then number 5 comes Trent McDuffie, one of the big acquisitions for the Rams this year. Obviously they gave up a ton to acquire him, a 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 6th round pick, and then signed him to a 4-year, $124 million deal. So, they clearly think he's worth all that. I think a lot of people would probably say Quinyon Mitchell is better than McDuffie entering this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, and McDuffie's fantastic, but I think the Chiefs played a little money ball here. They got the 1st round pick. They selected another cornerback with their 1st pick, who has a lot of the same, traits. And I think when you look at that 4-year 124, it's you're kind of looking into the window of what you're going to have to pay Quinyon in a year and a half down the road too.
Yeah, I hear you there. Brian asked, did they leave Reek off the list? Brian Cameron might have the biggest man crush on Reek Woolen this year. You'll hear that a lot from Brian. He was all over the Eagles signing him. I will give him that. He wanted the Eagles to get him. Howie Roseman made the move. But yes, Woolen did not make the list. Number 7 after Mitchell, it was Denzel Ward of the Cleveland Browns. He came in last year's ranking at number 3, so he's taken a dip. So he falls to 7. Carolina Panthers J.C. Horn comes in at 8th. He was 7th last year. Sauce Gardner of the Indianapolis Colts was 5th last year. And then number 10, as we mentioned, DeJean. Honorable mentions, Kamari Lassiter of Houston, Joey Porter Jr. of Pittsburgh, A.J. Terrell Jr. of Atlanta, and Jalen Johnson of Chicago. So those are your top guys. Reek Woolen did receive votes for what it's worth. They do note that down at the bottom of this ranking. Other guys, Marlon Humphrey, Deron Bland, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Travis Hunter, Tyson Campbell, Byron Murphy Jr., so there's a handful of guys that also received votes but did not get enough to basically get slotted into the top 10 there. So that is your top 10 cornerback list. According to ESPN survey, again, this was done by asking executives, scouts, personnel that are in the buildings around the game. It's not a player vote. It's not a fan vote. So I do think, David, there is some stock that you can put into some of these rankings. But again, everything is also subjective, as we just talked about. We think Quinyon could easily be 3, 4, and 5, where you talk to a different scout or a different executive and they might disagree. So it's just a fun piece of conversation to have while we're waiting for this lull period to end for training camp. But I will say the Eagles are the only team with 2 top 10 cornerbacks on that list. So that's got to make Howie Roseman and the fans out there feeling pretty good. Now, they did the running backs as well. Saquon Barkley came in at number 3, David, and we talked about this earlier, but I think that that's probably where Barkley should be based on last year's performance, but what we know the ceiling can be for Saquon.
Yeah, I agree. I would have both that were ahead of him as well. 3 is exactly where I would have put him. Because when you look at the, downside of his season last year, most of it was due to the line. It was not due to some sort of fall off with him. So it isn't like he has lost a step or he was hitting the hole slower or, he was leaving blocks behind, doing his own thing. None of that contributed to why he struggled so much last season. And again, when we're talking about struggling, what did he have? 1,100 yards.
Which is 10th most in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's a bad season. Like, and you also have to factor, they're coming off the Super Bowl season where he had just a ton of regular season carries, and then you add on top all of the other carries that he did in the postseason as well. But what he brings to the field every single time that nobody below him on that list has is he's one of the few home run threats at running back in the entire league. He's capable of scoring from anywhere on the field at any time. His versatility is just unmatched as far as being an elite runner and really reliable pass protection. I think it's, kind of fallen under the radar how effective he's been in working, in the offense with that. And the Eagles don't really utilize him that much. And I don't think he's really had like 60 plus receptions since his rookie season, but he has the capability of being a dangerous receiver. And I think heading into 2026, you're going to see them utilize him in that role a lot more than they have the past 2 seasons.
I agree. I have a piece coming out for us over at PSN as to why I think Saquon Barkley is going to have a bounce back year and why he's probably the most likely candidate in the NFL to just have a resurgence because of a lot of the reasons you just mentioned. A lot of it wasn't really his fault. You had a shoddy offensive line that wasn't healthy, inconsistent play calling. Barkley did take some blame earlier in the year, said he didn't think he played up to his standard and thought he kind of let the team down a little bit. But yeah, I agree that I think Barkley still has that capability, although the home run plays were down considerably this past year. He only had 4 runs of over 20 yards, which is kind of remarkable to even think of because he had 17 2 years ago when he ran for 2,000 yards. But what I thought was pretty interesting here at the bottom of the screen, if you can see it, we'll hide the comments real quick. But this is from an NFL coordinator. He says, my only criticism is that he doesn't always produce when things aren't completely clean. That's dating back to the Giants. Tends to need things perfectly set up for him. I read that, David, and I don't know about you, but I kind of scratched my head because in 2024, there were some runs where I thought he was going to get stuffed at the line of scrimmage, and he just makes a move, spins around a guy, and he's gone for 65 yards.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he never avoids contact. He punishes defenders when they come in. I don't know where that came from. That isn't the Saquon that I've seen. And if you look back at all of the years, that he didn't even get 1,000 with the Giants, it was mainly due to injury. It was never because everything had to be perfectly set up for him. I mean, unless they're referring to injuries, that's the only thing that would even make sense. I mean, he's been an absolute top tier running back since entering this league.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have another high-ranking personnel official say, I'm not going to penalize him for a terrible all-around offense last year. He's still a 3-down weapon, and if I needed a running back for one season, I'm taking him one. So, again, I think for this survey, if you actually go through each player, the quotes and the analysis, it's pretty fair split down the middle where they include positives and some negative thoughts on the players. And I do think that it could be just a useful, quick spark note, if you will, if you're trying to refresh yourself on who the stars are in the NFL. But Saquon Barkley certainly has the ability to still be a top running back. He's 29 years old. The other 2 guys ahead of him that David mentioned, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Lions and Bijan Robinson of Atlanta, they're 24. They're already 5 years younger than him. They are beyond explosive. And I agree. I do think those 2 certainly are in a tier above Barkley based on what we saw last year and what I think we can project those 2 to be. But I think Saquon still is really good. I know some might flip-flop him with the number 4 back on the list and Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, injuries normally play a factor with CMC. But I do think that, the Eagles running back, I think can be just as good, if not better than he was last year. And as you mentioned, he had over 1,000 yards. It was 10th most in the NFL. You mentioned he just doesn't shy away from contact. He had over 800 yards after contact last year. I mean, this guy was still running hard, even though he didn't have a crazy year. But again, the expectations, he had over 2,000 yards. So, like, the regression was always going to happen. Maybe you wanted to see 12 to 1,300 yards. But I think that for what the offense was last season, Barkley still put in a really solid year.
Yeah, he was getting hit basically behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage on over half of his carries. I mean, it was the offensive line just was, ineffective last season. And, when you're projecting things out this year, I agree with you by John and who was the other one ahead of him?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Jahmyr, yeah. They're both, especially if you think of this in like dynasty formats or something, when they're 24 years old, they're going to, probably get more votes because they just have, a brighter future. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Saquon Barkley led the league in rushing yards again in 2026.
Take a look at the rest of the list. Christian McCaffrey, as I mentioned, 4th. Jonathan Taylor at 5. He was like motoring his way through and then kind of just fell off a little bit. And then Derrick Henry, people are kind of wondering, hey, what's he got in the tank at 32? James Cook led the NFL in rushing yards last year. He came in at number 7 this year. He was number 8 last year. I thought he might have gotten a little bit of a bump in this ranking based on the overall body of work. But again, he sits at 7. Devon Achane at 8, another speedster, but has been dealing with some injuries. Kenneth Walker III. I think that's going to be an interesting fit in Kansas City, David. And Breece Hall rounds out the top 10 with the Jets.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at everybody like the honorable mentions who came after him, I can't put any of them above the top 10. I think they pretty much got it right. I'm a big fan of Travion Henderson, but he would probably be in the next tier, like that 11 through 14 range for me. I don't see anybody who would, I would elevate into the top 10 over any of them mentioned.
Yeah, the honorable mention, Josh Jacobs of Green Bay, Kyron Williams of the Rams, and Quinshon Judkins of the Browns. And then as David mentioned, Travion Henderson also received votes along with DeAndre Swift, former Eagle, Javonte Williams, Chase Brown, Ashton Genty, Travis Etienne Jr., and Alvin Kamara. So those are your top 10 running backs. Think the list is pretty accurate. I think that one is a little bit more set in stone. And now we've going to go to our last topic of the night, David. ESPN, they love these rankings, and they were trying to identify the top rosters in the league. Now, they basically went through all 32 teams to see who has the best roster, and the Eagles come in at number 2 in the league. I mean, that's pretty exciting in its own right.
Yeah, I have not seen this list yet. I saw you mention it in the chat today, but I purposely didn't look it up so I could play it out live when we did the pod. So who was number 1? I'm going Bills, Rams. Who was it?
It was the Rams. So the Rams got it. I'm trying to get that down there. That was not the correct slide that I wanted, but I'll get that up. But yeah, the Rams are number 1. And then I'm going to get the Eagles up here. The Eagles come up at number 2, and they break it down by biggest strength, biggest weakness, X factor, and a non-starter to know. I'm just going to pull this up real quick. So that gives us a time to let you guys know you should definitely be following us on Philly Sports Network. I'm at Corey_Nido. David is at David Neese PHL. Brian Cameron is, I believe, B Cameron NFL, and obviously follow Philly Sports Network as we've got you covered all season long. And make sure, if you don't already, to go over to YouTube and subscribe to our new channel as we're continuing to build that up on YouTube. We would certainly appreciate the support there in any capacity, whether you just throw a like on the stream. A subscribe button would be a lot better for us, but we just certainly appreciate you tuning in and making us a part of your evening here. So Let me see if I could get this up here. I don't know why it's not playing nearly as nice. I think I got it this time. And there we go. So the biggest strength, offensive tackle. Obviously, we know how good this Eagles front offensive line can be. Jordan Mailata had a down year by his standards, David, but he still graded out rather well. And obviously, Lane Johnson was dealing with injuries. He couldn't get in for the playoff game. Landon Dickerson has been banged up. But if the Eagles can be at full strength with Johnson and Dickerson, I think this offense can get back to what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I agree. Milata and Johnson, and then, you put Cam back in there too. If these treatments that him and Landon went to wherever South America to have are as effective as both players seem optimistic that they are. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about young guys. Lane is the only elder statesman on that line at this point. What is he, 35, 36 years old at this point? And, Cam and Landon, I don't know how old they are, 26. I mean, that technically they're right in their prime. So, their fallback last year was only due to injuries. So if they come back healthy and if those whatever, experimental treatments are as effective as, they're hoping to be, I would expect them to come right back to 2024 form, quite frankly. And I also like the way the new offense is going to protect. I don't think you're going to see Lane on an island like you have for the past 13 seasons. I think the offensive scheme's a little more designed to give them help and chip. And I'm really excited to see all of this in training camp and see how it starts to unfold before the season starts.
Yeah, I am too. And you mentioned Cam Jurgens is 26, Landon is 27, and Lane is 36. So, definitely Lane's got the most mileage underneath him, but when he's healthy, he's still one of the most prolific offensive linemen and right tackles in the game. So I agree. I think this is obviously going to be the biggest strength. Of course, no more Jeff Stoutland, no more Stoutland University, new coaching staff in to help Nick Sirianni usher this new wave of thinking and offensive philosophy moving forward. Biggest weakness that they list here, safety. I think that's fair to say only because it's kind of light after Makuba and Marcus Epps. I mean, you don't really have anybody. You traded Sidney Jones. They have a couple guys that are depth pieces, and they have the rookie in Wisniewski, but I don't know how much run he's going to get. I still think Howie Roseman probably will bring in another safety at some point, but maybe I'm the only man on this hill, but I also wouldn't be awfully upset if it is Makuba and Epps starting the season back there, because I thought Marcus Epps held his own last season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if you're looking at the roster, even if Epps and Makuba, assuming Makuba's healthy all season, which would be, the knock on him is his size and his, injury risk. And I don't know what he mean, basically missed half the season, but they would have to be the weakness because they're the only position on the defensive side of the ball that doesn't have, basically all pros or pro bowlers at every spot. So it would have to be them. I do think that Howie will be looking to, upgrade the safety position depending upon who comes available. I think he's made a lot of late signings up to and including CJ GJ. And back whatever years it was, 2022 and 2024. So he's always looking, but it is fair. It is the biggest weakness on the team if you have to pick one of the position groups.
Yeah, I agree there. And like I said, I would be okay with it, but I do think they need some depth at that position. There's no doubt about it. I'm trying to pull up the depth chart here real quick. The Wi-Fi is starting to act up a little bit, but you've got obviously Epps and Makuba, of course, DeJean in base, but then the only other guys you've got JT Gray, Andre Sam, as I mentioned, Cole Wisniewski, the rookie that they drafted, Maximus Pulley, and Tucker Large, who is currently ruled out right now, a rookie out of Washington State. So, I mean, not a whole lot of names that people are going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember when he played as whoever with whoever, but certainly I do think that is a fair assessment that is their biggest weakness right now as it stands. Brian's boy, Reek Woolen, as the X Factor. David, I don't know if there's been a defensive player that has had so much hype surrounding him before training camp started than Reek Woolen right now. I mean, with the media attended practices, all the beat writers there raved about what Woolen has shown. He's got an extreme physical body. He's lengthy. Obviously, there are some concerns with him playing smart. He's been caught dinged up with some personal foul penalties, a couple of PIs and bad parts of the game. But you would like to believe that under Vic Fangio's tutelage, he won't be as hot-headed, for a lack of a better term, with this Eagles defense. But this could be an absolute slam dunk signing by Howie Roseman.
Yeah, I think it is. And also, he's been humbled. He went into this postseason thinking he was going to get a 3-year, $75+ million deal, and it never materialized. And he knows that the reasons that it didn't was for everything you just mentioned, the immature, play at times, the undisciplined. Even in, I believe it was the championship game, he almost did a play that could have cost him the game, a personal foul, like taunting or something on the sideline there. So he's been humbled a bit, and I think you'll see that, in the way he plays. He knows he can't be as undisciplined as he has been in the past. And, they all want that big contract, and he mentioned it too. I don't remember which reporter asked him, was he surprised that he didn't get the big deal? And he was frank and said, yes, I was. And he knows the reason was, for those maturity issues and, the lack of discipline at times. So I think everything you said, his height, his speed, his demeanor, the swagger that you have to have at that position, he brings all of it. I was a huge fan of him going all the way back in college. I wanted the Eagles to draft him back then. And I have been a proponent for them trying to get him, trade for him for the last couple of years. So I'm super excited about this as well. But you mentioned the hype for him. It is a little interesting when you consider they also traded for Jonathan Grenard, who could be hugely impactful on this team. And he kind of just goes under the radar. I mean, He never gets mentioned.
And he was the big sign on draft night when they made the trade. They signed him to the new deal, and that was the edge rusher, and everybody needs edge rushers, and everybody wants as many as they can. But it just seems like every media attended practice that there were, now there's only 2, but the 2 that the media were able to go to, everybody raved about Reek Woolen. So I think a lot of fans are excited. I know we're excited here on Flipping the Birds to see what he can do opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. If he plays to his capabilities, I think it's very easy to say that the Eagles will have the best 3 cornerback trio in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. And 4 if you throw Cooper in there.
Yep, absolutely. Non-starter to know, Hollywood Brown. I agree. I don't think he's going to be the starting wide receiver unless Mekhi Lemon's hamstring injury is more severe than they're hoping. Again, Hollywood Brown, I talked about this on one of my other shows. I don't know if this wide receiver room moves the needle for me as much as it does for others. I don't know where you stand, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think Devontae is your clear-cut number 1. In my eyes, Mekhi Lemon is the number 2. I don't buy into the Dontavian Wicks could be the number 2 receiver on this team hype. His best year came 2 or 3 seasons ago, and he's a great fit, and he's a great role player, but I don't think he's here to compete for wide receiver 2. I think he's here to complement the 2 guys who, have taken that role. Hollywood Brown, non-starter to know. He could be, he's going to, be able to stretch the field vertically for the Eagles at times. I'd be surprised if he's, a high volume guy at this, part of the roster when they're, picking these guys. I would have probably gone Tank Bigsby. I just think that he's the non-starter on that offensive side of the ball who might get a lot more play than people are realizing. And not due to a Saquon fall off or injury. I just think they're going to try to utilize his skill set. I think they saw late in the season how effective he could be. And if you want that 1-2 punch to control the ground, I mean, you got it right there. So I would have gone with Tank Bigsby there, but Hollywood Brown can definitely, stretch the field and open things up in the middle and underneath, which is going to be their priority, in this offense.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Bigsby would have been the better choice. You see that Hollywood Brown did have almost 600 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns on 49 catches. I mean, that's not a terrible ratio. That's pretty much a touchdown every 10 catches, and is 12 yards per reception, the highest since 2020. But he also did not score favorably in ESPN's receiver scores, which admittedly, I have no idea how that is even scored, but 32 out of 100 obviously isn't a great number to have, but nonetheless, he is their non-starter to know. But I agree with you there, David. I do think Tank Bigsby would be that guy because the Eagles, I think, need Bigsby to take on a little bit of a larger role. I'm not saying it's going to be a 50-50 split, but give Barkley a couple of drives off or just have him go first down and then put Bigsby in at second and third or mix it up once in a while, depending on how the game is going, to keep Barkley's legs fresh, to allow him to hit those home run plays that we talked about earlier in the show tonight, where he only had 4 rushes of 20-plus yards last year. Keep those legs fresh, make sure the offensive line is healthy, and I think that they can kind of get back to that bread and butter formula that they've relied on to get to the Super Bowl and ultimately win it just a couple of seasons ago. So that will just about do it for this episode of Flippin' the Birds. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. No Brian Cameron tonight, but he will rejoin us next week. Appreciate you all for tuning in, whether it's on X, on YouTube. Again, if you haven't already, go over to YouTube, hit that like button, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment as well. Let us know your thoughts on the rankings. Again, Quinyon Mitchell coming in at number 6 at cornerback, Cooper DeJean at 10, too high, too low, Saquon Barkley at number 3. And I'm trying to see before we sign off who the next position group will be, because, again, they are doing this on the daily. I'm trying to see if they list who they're going. So today was the 7th. Edge rushers tomorrow, David. So that will be certainly an interesting list to keep an eye out for, to see if Eagles' newest addition, as you mentioned, Jonathan Grenard, finds his way on that top 10 list. But as always, we appreciate you watching. He's David Neese. I'm Corey Nido. 2/3 of Flippin' the Birds here tonight, and we'll be back with more Eagles talk next week as we get a little closer to training camp. 3 weeks to the day for the Eagles to head back down to South Philly, and the season starts to feel real, David.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's getting good. We're almost through the dead zone, which is not as long as it used to be. The NFL is pretty good at keeping things going the whole season, though.
Thank God, because the dead zone for the Eagles has been kind of brutal this year with all the drama and all these headlines and stories and topics that are kind of head-scratching. But appreciate you guys, as always. We'll be back with more. Make sure you follow us on X, Instagram. And again, thanks for tuning in tonight. He's David Neese. I'm Corey Nido, and this is Flippin' the Birds.